This is a Sandy Boy Productions podcast. Hey everybody, welcome to I'll Have Another podcast with Lindsay Hine. I'm your host, Lindsay. I'm so grateful you're here today. This episode of the podcast is sponsored by Previnex. If you are looking for a clean and effective product, check out Previnex multivitamins and supplements as well as their protein powder. And if you are a runner looking for longevity in the sport, do not sleep on their Joint Health Plus. Joint Health Plus is clinically proven to offer the most comprehensive and complete joint protection and relief available on the market. And if you are looking for a protein powder, look no further. They have chocolate and vanilla. It's delicious. 10 grams of protein with 1 scoop, 20 grams with 2 scoops. And it also provides you with so many other vitamins and minerals that other protein powders do not. Go to Previnex.com and use the code ANOTHER to save 15% off your order. Today's episode is such a fun episode. I've wanted to interview this person for a long time, and you're listening to episode 316, and I'm talking with Stefanie Flippin. Stefanie recently grabbed the national title in the USATF 100-mile championships. A huge day for Stefanie. She ran 14:35:21 for 100 miles in 8:45 per mile on average, a 40-minute course record, 3rd overall, first female, and 6th all-time American woman at that distance. Truly an incredible day for Stefanie. Now, if you are not following Stefanie on Instagram, I am telling you, you need to go do that. Her name is Stefanie Flippin over there, and her Instagram is just, it's got so many great pictures, but also so many great words. She is so good at this thing. And in this podcast, you're going to hear about how she got to this point in her career where she had this breakthrough performance. Stefanie is also a doctor. She's a surgeon, an ankle and foot surgeon. She co-owns a practice with her husband, and she's also a coach for Lift, Run, Perform. So she has so much going on, and you're going to hear all about it in this episode. If you enjoy it, please reach out to Stefanie and let her know how you enjoy the conversation. But also, if you could leave us a rating and review, that is a huge help in new listeners finding the show. So I ask that every week, and I really mean it, and I really appreciate everyone who does. So thank you. And if you're looking for more content from me and this podcast, I have a Patreon page, and we put out weekly episodes over there as well. That's patreon.com/Lindsay Hine. All right, friends, enjoy my conversation with Stefanie. All right. Well, today on I'll Have Another, we have Stefanie Flippin on the show. Welcome to the show, Stefanie.
Hi, Lindsay. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, it looks nice and beautiful in Colorado because I can see out your window right now.
Yeah, this is like the most quiet space I have right now. This is our dining room. Yeah, it's actually, I think a big storm is about to roll in though.
Oh, there's something really peaceful about that, like right before it happens.
Yes. And we typically don't get a lot of rain either, so it's been kind of nice.
So I saw, I don't know if it was your Instagram or your husband's, that you guys bought land. So are you guys building?
Did. Yeah, we are. We purchased land last year in 2020. We had to put the build, we had to put some things on hold, obviously. We actually closed down our land like the last day in February. So literally right before COVID exploded.
Wow.
So it was, I mean, I guess you could look at it a couple different ways. I mean, the timing just was what it was, but we had to put things on hold for a little bit. But yeah, we're finally moving forward with things now. So.
Yeah, somebody was telling me that the cost of like lumber and stuff is just crazy right now.
Yes. Yeah. We have been hoping that comes down. I think at its highest, I think lumber was at like 300% or something like outrageous. So we're just hoping things continue to normalize.
Yeah. Well, that's so exciting. I've always said like it would be a dream to be able to build and just like have the space just how you want it, like an open concept and, you know, like little custom things here and there. Like I have a dream of having my boys in like 4 bunks in one room that are like built into the wall. So, and those are things you can only do if you build, really.
Right. Right. Yeah, it was a kind of a big decision for us, obviously, but it kind of made the most sense for us just in terms of what was available in our area and things like that. So yeah. So it's just the two of us, and we're both pretty environmentally conscious. So a lot of the mountain homes are either like they're enormous, so it's like a huge space to have to heat, and it's like, well, it's just the two of us
Not
right
necessary.
now. We don't need or want like 5,000 square feet of old homes. So,
my gosh, our house was built in 1912, and yes, old homes are like so expensive to heat.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, it made most sense for us.
That's so fun. Okay, so you guys live in Evergreen, Colorado, and I am like in awe of your life, being a doctor, running 100 miles a week, and I'm just inspired. Your Instagram, Stefanie, is amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Because your pictures are beautiful, but like it's not just that. Like, they say you do Instagram well if you have like really great pictures or really great words, and you have both.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I do have to credit my husband to snapping all the photos. I feel I can't take credit for that aspect of it, though.
Well, you also have a beautiful backdrop.
Yes, that's true.
In Colorado. Well, I've wanted to have you on for a while, but you recently had the most amazing accomplishment. First female, 1435 in the 100-miler, making you the USATF 100-mile national champion. How does that feel? Congratulations.
Thank you so much. I think that day will always have a sense of surrealism around it. I don't know that I'll ever kind of accept that it actually happened. It was a really, really great day. I feel like, we all know how many factors need to come together to have, that, breakout moment, that breakout day. It's certainly like not everything went perfectly, but I think a combination of like where my mind was at, the training that I was able to get in leading up to it. I didn't feel any pressure on myself going into the day. I think that had a lot to do with it. And it ended up just going about as well as I could have hoped. So
I have heard that so many times from the hundreds of interviews I've done. When we like relieve that pressure from ourselves, we like open the door to so many more possibilities.
Yes, absolutely. And I feel like, if anyone that's listening that's been following my journey through running, I didn't really start off like in the competitive space with running. So initially there was no pressure ever. I was running for fun. I was running as a stress reliever, and as I kind of left medical school and left residency, I had a little bit more time to place on training. But I think that's kind of a double-edged sword, kind of the more focused I got and the more kind of as I inched towards being more competitive, it was a balancing act for sure. I think I started to take myself a little bit too seriously and then had to back away from that. And I just feel really fortunate and grateful that I was able to kind of string together training blocks that ultimately led up to the national championship. So
how did you get to that place mentally? What did you do to make that happen?
Yeah. Like as we've all kind of emerged from 2020 and just the most bizarre year ever. And so for so many different reasons, I think I really realized that I couldn't really sustain, the pressure that I was putting on myself. It really had nothing to do with anyone else. It's largely my personality. I feel like a lot of runners are type A. And I just really had to evaluate like why I was doing everything. And just the fact that no one really cared what my specific goals were. No one, I think we've all heard the saying that, we're all personally are the ones that care the most about our goals and our times and things like that. So I just really had to take a step back. Sorry, my dog is trying to get up in here. I just really had to take a step back and think about what really sounded exciting to me, what I really wanted to focus on. I think I got kind of caught up in, chasing certain time goals and things like that, which, are wonderful and I still have, but I really needed to focus on what sounded fun and exciting to me.
Okay, yeah, because I started following along with you, I think a little bit before you did the training for the trial series with Matt on Rambling Runner. So talk about that experience. You know, you had this big goal, run 244. You came away running 254, which was also, by the way, a massive PR to everybody listening.
It was. Yeah, it was.
But
definitely.
like the heartbreak of that experience of like putting yourself out there, not meeting that goal, but then like just like getting back to the love of running.
Yeah, you know, oddly enough, I really did enjoy the experience because, like I mentioned before, I really hadn't ever been like competitive, especially not in like the road marathon or any like even shorter distances, things like that. So it kind of came at me pretty quickly, you know, and as we saw, you know, there were so many other women going after that time standard, you know, many women that were much more talented than myself that also like fell short. I don't know. I mean, I was bummed, obviously, but in the big scheme of things, I guess it wasn't this like lifelong goal that I'd been working towards for years upon years. And I felt like I didn't really want to take away from so many of the women that have been working towards that goal for so long. For myself, it was like, hey, you know, let's see what we can do in a year. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Obviously, it's a lot easier for me to kind of look back and have that mindset, you know, in the day-to-day and the weeks-to-weeks throughout training. I don't know. I just felt like there was a lot of pressure, and there was a lot of pressure I was putting on myself. And I was still running, like you said, like massive PRs along the way. You know, and I think it was a wonderful learning experience for me, and of what to do and what not to do in terms of how I approach training. And yeah, I wouldn't trade it for the world. I think it's really set me up well, to have a healthy mindset with running moving forward. So.
And you still got that well below sub-3 marathon time.
Yeah. And, you know, I feel like it's always something to really celebrate. I know there are a lot of other listeners out there that may have fallen, you know, we've all fallen short, you know, whether it's in running or other personal or professional goals. But I just like to zoom out, you know, it's just another stepping stone, you know, and who knows what can happen in another year, or 2 or 5 or 10. So.
Yeah. Okay. So, but before you trained for the trial, so that was 2019, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which I'm bummed. We could have met because you were in Indianapolis.
I know.
Darn it.
I know.
But you had already done 100-milers. You were already into the ultra scene. So what was it like the onset of like everybody trying to train for the trials that made you like excited, like, hey, why not give this a go and step away from like 100-milers for a bit?
Yeah, you know, I think I hadn't really ever focused on like speed work consistently. You know, the times that I'd been running on the roads, they always seemed fairly easy. You know, I hadn't ever really been training specifically for it. So I knew there was more potential there to go after. And yeah, you know, it was really exciting. You know, the elite women's like field, just everyone just rising to the occasion. It was super exciting. And it was fun to kind of be a part of all of that, with teammates, you know, other women that were going after it. And I think that, I think it was a fun goal to go after. And it, like I said, it kind of set me up well, in terms of looking to what's next after that phase of training. So. Okay.
I do not know if I read this wrong or it was a typo.
Yeah.
But tell me this, when you ran Tunnel Hill in 15:55, was that an 11-hour PR?
It was.
Holy crap. Like, that's no joke.
Yeah. You know, and for any of like your trail and ultra listeners out there, you know, they're probably understanding that, okay, like she probably had never ran like a non-mountainous 100-miler,
sure.
You know, in a flatter race.
Sure.
Yeah. So that does play a role there too. But yeah, I actually had, prior to that, I had never, I just hadn't had a great day in the 100-mile distance to even like dip below 24 hours.
On top of the course, like.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So all the other 100-milers I had ran, it had either been just awful conditions, or it had, like I said, been like a mountainous race, and
sure.
You know, a faster time like under 20 hours just was out of the question for the course.
So yeah, obviously, like if you're doing like, I don't know what to compare it to, like Mohican or something like that, where you're up, you know, up and down and up and down. It's a totally different course than when you're doing Tunnel Hill or the race that you did in Nevada. It's where it's like kind of flat and you can kind of actually run. You don't have to hike
Right.
up hills.
Right.
That's just so much more time on your feet on those mountainous courses. Like, is that
Yeah.
kind of a different race?
It definitely is. That's for sure. And I think like I'd never really like I've always enjoyed ultra running, but like prior to this past November when I raced Tunnel Hill, I think a part of my like hesitation to kind of return to 100-milers is I was like, gosh, I haven't felt like I've mastered the like running through the night portion. It's just something that I've always really needed a lot of like mental focus on, and like night runs. I mean, you could say that for anyone. Night running is not easy by any means. But so something that drew me to a race like Tunnel Hill, as well as the national championships, was that in a perfect race day, I wouldn't have to be running through the night. So yeah, that's something that I was kind of intrigued by to go after. And like I said, it was just kind of a different sort of race setting for the 100-mile distance than I'd done previously. So.
For those listening, she won this race. It's the USATF Championships. And I have no idea who else was in the field, like what their performance was or whatnot. But
Sure.
I do know that Camille Herron was in the field. So I'm assuming when you get to the start line, knowing who Camille Herron is, you're thinking, maybe I'll get second. I don't know.
Yeah.
You tell me. I don't know.
Yeah. Camille is a wonderful friend. I'm so honored to call her a friend after the national championships. She's a wonderful person, but she was a late entry into the race. So on top of that, though, but before I even knew that she was running the race, the field was probably the most packed elite field that I'd ever lined up for. I mean, outside of like a large road marathon or anything like that, definitely in the ultra running space, just a lot of very talented runners. There's American record holders also lining up, and many members of Team USA for the 24-hour team. Yeah, in the men's field, Zach Bitter was also racing, and just tons of other talented men. So, I didn't really, I largely put myself into this race and wanted to run it because I knew that the caliber of talent was high. And I knew that I really needed to get out of my comfort zone and line up with the best of the best, knowing that in doing so, I would also be able to get the best out of myself on the day. And that's actually what I ended up telling my friend, Micah, the day before. We were just chatting, and none of us knew how things were going to play out with such like an incredible field. That's honestly kind of rare to see in the ultra running space. Mm-hmm. It can be difficult to get everyone like lined up. Usually, each professional or elite ultra runner has their own kind of race schedule lined up, obviously, and it's tough to get everyone together for one single race. So it was exciting. And I didn't go into it, with a specific podium goal by any means. I really just was wanting to focus on, like I said, getting the best out of myself on the day.
Now, listen, everybody, I have gotten myself into trouble before. I made a comment one time to Kira D'Amato, and I listened back and I was like, you kind of sound like a jerk when you said that. And now, you know what I mean? So sure. When I say that to the listeners, like, Camille Herron, she's at the Comrades Marathon champion, right. And it's not to like underestimate Stefanie. It's just Camille has this like certain stature to her name at this point in her career.
Yes. I would never ever take offense to that. I would never ever take it in a negative way. So.
Okay, so you didn't go into it like with the idea like I'm going to try to podium, but like
right.
You also, it sounds like based on your training, you were training really well for this, and like, did you think it's kind of like with Kira? When I interview her, it's like she told me I felt like I kind of feel like I've had this like secret, like I knew what I had in me that I could unleash, and nobody really knew yet until she went and did the darn thing at the Marathon Project.
Right.
So like, did you kind of feel like you had something that you were unleashing that people might not have realized how trained and good you were going to be?
I mean, to a certain extent, yes, just because I don't think I talked about my race at Tunnel Hill too much in terms of like how I felt, my training leading up into it. Tunnel Hill was largely like a time trial 100-miler. That's just not ideal for anyone. It was a truncated field size. There was no pacers allowed. So, the first wave for Tunnel Hill, I was like the only female. There was 9 other men, and they all took off ahead of me. So I was kind of stuck in no man's land. My husband was like single crewing for me, and I had no pacers. So,
wow.
And my training leading up to Tunnel Hill hadn't been quite so ideal. I'd had a lot of stress with work and stuff like that. So I didn't want to detract like from, taking the female win and running like an enormous PR for me. But it actually wasn't my strongest race. I just wasn't pleased with like how my legs were feeling at 50 miles. I just knew I could have done a lot of things differently. Again, though, it was my first return to racing in over a year. And, I hadn't run a 100-miler in like 2.5 years. So it was still like a learning curve for me to get back into it. But I just knew that the time I had ran at Tunnel Hill wasn't necessarily reflective of my fitness and what I could do with, a better, more high quality training block. So I really focused on, kind of correcting and filling in the gaps that I felt like I'd missed at Tunnel Hill in November to turn around and see what I could do and how I could improve at the national championships. I knew like the training that I'd put in, and I was definitely placing a lot of trust in what I'd done. But then again, there were so many outside factors, A, the depth of the field, B, it got up to like 89 degrees.
Oh, that's so hot.
I had prepared for it with heat training and things like that. And my husband and I had a good plan in place on how to keep me cool throughout the race. But, in conditions like that, it's like you just never know how your body's going to react, even if you've prepared well for it. Because I had many friends that were racing the national championships that live down in the South, like much warmer, like humid places than I do here in Colorado. And they've been training in those conditions, and they still, we all struggled at certain points though.
Yeah, there's a picture of your husband like giving you a wet washcloth or something, and you look very hot.
Yes, yeah. Fortunately, it's the course, you can't always have like a crew that you're seeing every mile. But because it was looped, we were all able to get, doused in cold water, ice bandanas and things like that about, just over each mile. So that was also super helpful.
All right, everybody, a quick break here to let you know about Whoop. They are a fitness wearable that provides 24/7 personalized insights around your sleep, recovery, and daily activity. And listen, you do not have to be an elite athlete to invest in a product like this. This is so helpful. You put so much time out there running all those miles. You might as well figure out all the details so that you can recover the best you can so that you can perform the best you can. This is different than your standard GPS watch. It's focused on your body's recovery, and everyone knows that runners aren't always the best at taking off days or listening to their bodies. So this is the little nudge you need if you need a little extra sleep or you need a little extra recovery day. Who doesn't like a recovery day? It feels so good. I've been wearing my Whoop, and let me tell you how good it feels to wake up in the morning and see 8 hours on the board. It also encourages me to go to bed early because I know that in the morning I'm going to check that watch. Whoop has impacted my training in a positive way, and I know it can do that for you as well. Whoop is offering 15% off when you use the code ANOTHER at checkout. Go to Whoop, WHOOP.com and enter ANOTHER to get 15% off. Sleep better, recover faster, run faster. Get to the start line healthy with Whoop. All right, back to my conversation with Stefanie. Did you literally run a 1.2 mile loop like
Yes.
90 times or something?
Yeah. It was, I think it was 1.18 or 1.17. So it was a total of like 85 laps. Yeah.
Okay, so that makes this really interesting because a lot of ultra races, just say Western states, for example, like
Right.
you can get intel on like how far back someone is.
Yes.
But you really know.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think when I was going into this race, I knew that, and I knew that just to not get caught up in that. So I think I probably got to like mile 70. And I really didn't know at all like what place I was in. I knew, I could tell that I was probably in the top 3, but I didn't know for women. I didn't know where I was overall. And probably up until mile 70, I was definitely running with like blinders up. I wasn't like focusing on who was, stopping, and who was at like the aid station, who was hurting, things like that. So with a loop course, yes, you are right. Like I could always kind of tell, the general like positioning of people, but it was becoming difficult to tell because Camille took off ahead of me. I wasn't, I had a different pacing strategy. So I had no idea that she had like, stopped to like take a shower or something, or to get doused. And similarly, like with another female competitor that I was running with, like I had no idea that she'd pulled off, and was in an aid, one of the tents. So I didn't know like which lap we were each on. So
and the laps are so short that like,
right.
Yeah.
So that added an element too. But thankfully, my husband was keeping track as my crew. So.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So talk to me about the race plan on a course like that, where, like it's not super hilly.
Right.
You probably had an idea of what pace you were going to run for the race.
Yeah.
And what was it, like 8:45 or something?
Yeah. 8:45 ended up being my average pace.
Is that what you thought you could do?
You know what? So the 100-mile distance, and especially I knew like with the heat going into it, it was kind of tough. I actually didn't write myself like a structured pace plan, just knowing that, okay, I wanted to be competitive at this race. So I wasn't going to like strictly stick to a pace if everyone else was, way far ahead of me. I didn't want to get, dragged, just drug behind and not like be in it. So I just told myself, keep things feeling easy and sustainable. I also had to take into account though, that when the race started, it was cooler. So you never really want to bank time, it's like, but it's you have to be a little bit strategic in a 100-miler, knowing that the peak, heat of the day, you are going to slow down because of that. So, I think I went, I don't know what my marathon split was, but I think I was like 7:30 to 7:45, for up until probably like 50K around that mark. And then I knew, keeping track on my watch, what hour it was. And I knew like once it hit like noon, 1 o'clock, that everyone was inevitably going to slow down.
Yeah.
So I just made sure things felt easy at all times. So, and just steady.
That's such a good point, because it's also different than like a marathon per se, even though a marathon is a long distance to run.
Right.
Because like if you go out too hard in a marathon, you're probably going out hard enough that you're probably going to kill your legs. Right. But like you're not speeding up enough that like your legs are going to take that toll that they would if you dropped it down in the marathon.
Right. Yeah, I know. I had a conversation with someone else about this too. And it's tough because it's like I think a few of my miles were like 7:15, which is definitely still like my easy pace. But, for this type of a race, my overall paces, it's just such a wide range of easy paces, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so much strategy that went into that. Okay. Did you feel good? Like when did you get to the point in the race where you're like, okay, we are really working now?
Yeah, fortunately, I think because I had just been focused on remaining steady the whole time, I don't think that I really started to feel, and this is largely due to my training. I was really, really pleased with how far I was able to get before I started to really feel it. I think I was really starting to feel it like once I hit like late 80s and on the last 10 miles of the race. And I don't know if it was so much physical. I was kind of struggling with, I was cramping, but it wasn't like salt induced. I had definitely been taking in enough salt. I think it was largely because I hadn't trained a lot with holding my handheld bottle. So just like the added weight of it, I mean, for a marathon, that's like, it's usually typically fine. But once you're holding it for so long, that just weight, and with my arm bent a certain way, I was starting to have really bad hand cramping. And like my arms were just like not extending. So I was battling that. But I think I more so started to feel like the mental pressure of things, or like late 80s, like mile 90, simply because at that point, like all the spectators, like all the race, workers and all the other runners were like, it was becoming very evident that, like I had a very, I had been in the lead now for a while. But I needed to maintain it because Camille was starting to feel better and coming back. I think
so much pressure.
It was more of like just the pressure of like keeping my lead and not letting that go. It wasn't so much like a physical, like, oh my gosh, I'm tired. I of course was tired and fatiguing, but, with the short loops and, there were so many spectators out and everyone was like, shouting out splits and like the USATF reps were there. And, other like professional runners were like consulting with my husband about like, my strategy and how I had to maintain, I had like a 7-minute lead that I had to maintain. I really couldn't afford to slow down or else I was probably going to lose the title. So I think it was more of a mental pressure at that point that I'd really never experienced anything like that before at the end of a race. So
pressure that you might not have realized you were getting yourself into before the race.
Right. Yeah, totally. Like it was like strangers were out there, like screaming my name and they're like, all right, like you got like hold this pace, I remember like, I can't remember what mile it was, but like I just like peed into my shorts because I was like, I don't have time to do, I think it was like mile 95. I'm like, just go, it's fine. They'll get hosed off.
Oh, for sure.
But yeah, I mean, I never anticipated, when I lined up the morning of that, this is how the day would unfold and that, everyone would be on their feet, like chanting. I mean, it was electrifying. It was an experience that I will never forget. And I'm so grateful to have had the experience, but it certainly wasn't what I had anticipated, like when I started in the morning. So
how much did you beat Camille by?
7 minutes.
Oh, so you kept that 7 minutes.
Yeah. So I was able to like keep that buffer. But yeah,
I mean, that's less than a lap.
Yeah, it was close. I think what ended up happening is that all three of us, top three women, were technically on the same lap all at the same time. So we were obviously staggered. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, it was pretty. I mean, for a 100-mile distance, that's very close.
Yeah, it is.
Obviously, yeah.
Is third place? Who is that?
Micah Morgan.
Oh, Micah Morgan. Oh, that's who you were talking to before the race.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So when you entered the last lap there, you knew you still had the 7 minutes?
You know what? I was starting to get delirious at that point.
Sure.
Yeah, like I was really, I mean, I was like running with like two other guys I think they were part of like the 48-hour race that was going at the same time. I was fairly out of it. I think I had kind of slacked on my nutrition like the last 5 miles because it was just like we were just so focused on maintaining the lead. Yeah, I mean, I was pretty delirious in the last lap, that's for sure. I just remember my husband like grabbing my bottle and yelling like, enjoy this lap, like, enjoy it for yourself. And yeah, I mean, it just, that last lap, just that last mile just felt so surreal. I think a part of me just kind of wanted it to be over, not from a physical like running standpoint, but just so that there was no more like mental pressure.
Sure.
Like I just wanted closure on the race. I just remember thinking that I'm like, I just want this to be over so I know what the outcome is. So I don't
either way.
Yeah. Like I don't want to like disappoint folks anymore. Like I just want to like know how it ends. Which in hindsight, it sounds kind of silly for me to say that, but I just remember thinking that in the last mile. So. Oh,
I would have been thinking that too, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So, this is like kind of a career defining, not kind of, this is a career defining moment for you in the world of running.
Right. Yeah.
What do you make of it and what do you do with it?
Yeah. Like I said, I mean, deep down, I knew that the time that I ran, and perfectly clear too, I had no idea what time I was going to finish it. I hadn't been looking at my watch like at all day. I'd really only just glanced down to just check what time of day it was. I think my watch got off a little bit on total mileage, but I had no idea. Like I didn't know if we were at 15 hours. I didn't know how much under 15 hours we were. But I think, a part of me, I knew that I would, my goal was to dip under 15 hours. I just didn't know by how much would be possible with the conditions. But yeah, I knew deep down that I had that type of time and that fitness in me, but I don't think that prior to lining up for the race that I even thought further than, just having a good day for myself. I didn't even know, I had a general idea of what like the top 10 like all-time American women times were for the distance, but that wasn't something I was shooting for or anything like that.
Did this put you at 6? I thought I read.
Yeah, 6 all time. So
that's incredible.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, like I said, I think it'll always feel a little bit surreal to me just because, I'm not a professional runner. I'm not someone that set out, to gather accolades or anything like that. It has really just always been something I've enjoyed doing. But I definitely have a separate professional career too. So,
yeah. For those listening, Stefanie is a doctor. Now, tell us about your practice with your husband.
Yeah, so my husband and I met in medical school. We were in the Detroit area for our residencies. We both knew that we wanted to be in like a mountain area to try to open up our own practice together. We were fortunate to find someone that was retiring in like the Lakewood Golden area for anyone that's familiar with Colorado and like the Denver area. So yeah, we took over in the summer of 2018. And we have just kind of slowly been building up our practice since then. We went through a pretty rough year in 2020 because of COVID. Any business owners, and you too, Lindsay, are familiar with, it's like, even though we took over for someone that, for a doctor that was retiring, I mean, she had largely phased out. She hadn't been taking on new patients. So we really had to do a lot to turn around the practice and to grow it.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So, it wasn't like starting from scratch, but it was closer to that than it was like a turnkey practice or business model. So 2020 was pretty rough for us because that was supposed to be, a large year of growth, and we had a lot of plans to do it. And we just had to shift things around and put certain things on hold. But yeah, that was something that, the stress of all that, I just didn't know how it was really going to impact, like my training and returning to racing. So I feel fortunate to have been able to kind of balance the two the best I could. So.
Okay. So you guys are foot and ankle specialists. Tell us about what you guys do.
Yeah. So, my husband and I both completed surgical residencies, like I said, in the Detroit area. We pretty much treat anything and everything in the foot and the ankle, whether it's trauma, whether it's diabetics, whether it's elective surgeries. Our area here in Colorado is fairly healthy. So we don't typically see like a similar patient demographic like we did in the Detroit area. But yeah, so, a lot of our surgeries are elective.
Like for athletes?
Yeah. We see a fair amount of athletes, but we also see peds, children, all the way up to like older folks and things like that. So like I said, a lot of our surgeries are elective. So we were unfortunately impacted quite a bit by closure of elective surgeries in 2020. Sure. Yeah, I think there was like 6 months where we like really couldn't operate. So that was a rough patch. So
what does that look like business wise? Like, I'm sure you have a receptionist and like nurses in your office and stuff. So like, what did that look like?
Yeah. So we were fortunate to be able to keep all of our staff at full pay throughout the pandemic. That was something that was really important to us. Awesome. Just, and we were just very clear and open about like the books and stuff like that. And, my husband and I didn't take paychecks for the majority of the year, so that we could sustain our staff. And, we feel fortunate, that we didn't have to close. I know that there are many other businesses that had to. So in the big scheme of things, we made it through, and we feel happy about that. So
it's just wild because, throughout the pandemic, at least for me, and I'm sure a lot of other people, I didn't think about like medical practices struggling.
Yeah. With specialists, and even, I even have like primary care colleagues too, that had to take out, like private loans just in order to be able to float, like you said, like staff salaries and things like that. We were fortunate to receive like some government assistance, but I mean, nothing that could really ever make up for the losses that we sustained from the year. We had a significant number of older, like elderly patients as well that we see like on a routine basis. And, unfortunately, there was a pretty significant loss of life, if those patients were in like assisted living and things like that. So that was a pretty rough aspect of the year. I'm sure we all know, have experienced loss at this point from the pandemic, but that impacted us as well. Yeah, it was definitely a tough time.
Yeah, because you mentioned earlier that, stress at work and things like that, if,
Yeah.
you didn't know how that would affect you. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's wild to hear you talk back through that. How do you,
Yeah.
once things are getting back going and
Sure.
whatnot,
Mm-hmm.
how do you now like go forward with like, you want to grow your business, you want to,
Yeah.
pursue that and be
Yeah.
successful in that, but also now you kind of have this new, like, okay, well, I'm a national champion in the 100-miler.
Right.
Like, how do you pursue both at such a high level?
Right. Yeah. I think it's been really, really helpful that my husband and I are in practice together. I mean, he's also a runner, so he definitely understands like my goals and things like that. I think we've had conversations about, maybe me backing off certain days, like with hours and things like that, just so that I can continue to have the time to put in the training that's required for, competitive ultra running. So that's been really helpful. I feel like he's, my biggest supporter in it. And we can really kind of balance, patient load and things like that. And we've discussed potentially, moving forward, depending on, certain races and my certain goals that, I may, like I said, I just may back off with taking new patients and things like that. But I never want to stop doing being a doctor or a surgeon. I mean, it's something that I'm really passionate about. So it's not ever something that I would want to just absolutely leave behind.
How cool, though, that, as challenging as it has been, that you guys own your own practice and together that you can you can create that balance that you want.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny to hear you say that, because sometimes I just get so carried away with the day to day and everything, all of my responsibilities and things like that. Like being a business owner, sometimes I forget, like, oh my gosh, like in the past 3 years, this is all that my husband and I and our practice and our employees have weathered together. Sometimes it's like I kind of forget just how much it's been. But yeah, I'm glad that my husband and I took that risk together in terms of, becoming business owners, as opposed to, it probably would have been a lot easier to just try to get hired on as an associate, like under someone else.
Yeah.
That would have definitely been a lot easier. But I'm glad that we took this step together, because like I said, it's given me a lot of opportunities with running that I might not have had otherwise, just solely based on the fact that I couldn't do my own hours and structure my own schedule. So
yeah, it's like a double-edged sword in a way, because it's like such a big risk, and of course it's scary because like if everything falls on you, it's your business, but like the freedom in that as well, man, that's amazing.
Yes.
You met in medical school. So how long have you guys been married?
We have been married for 4 years. Our anniversary is May 27th. So coming up on 4 years.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
So I want to hear more about like him supporting you in the training and like, does he also do ultras? I know he runs.
Yes. Yeah. So my husband Mitchell is definitely an ultra runner. He's definitely more in like the trail and mountain kind of aspect of ultra running. He's the one that got me into ultra running. Okay. I don't think I would have ever taken the dive into like trail and ultra running if it hadn't been for him. So yeah, I had been running for a while, and like I said, it was just for stress relief. Honestly, I grew up in San Diego. I moved to Chicago for school, and didn't know anyone. And I knew like, okay,
quite the difference, San Diego to Chicago.
I know. So I knew, I'm like, okay, like this is a completely different, climate here. I don't know anyone. It was the first time I'd made like a major move, away from like family and things like that. So I knew, I'm like, okay, like when you're placed in a situation like this, you definitely need to be able to manage your stress and in a healthy way. So I'm like, before I turn to, anything that's unhealthy, I'll just try to focus on starting off with running, and just being consistent with that. And yeah, I'll never forget, before my husband and I started dating, I remember he texted me and was like, hey, would you want to join me for my long run? And I laughed because at the time, like, the longest, what he was referring to was like 7-mile run.
Okay.
So it's funny, anyone that knows my husband, he ran like the Tahoe 200 race
wow.
in 2019. So yeah, it's funny to look back on how far. Yeah. But yeah, when we started dating, we were running like road half marathons and marathons and things like that, and just for fun. We ran the Chicago Marathon, I think, like for the 3 years we were there. And yeah, and then I don't remember like what it was, but at some point, this was back in like 2012, 2013. So ultra running had definitely been popular. And there was definitely like, super talented professional runners within the sport. But I don't think at that time it had really gained as much traction as it has now. And maybe that's, honestly, maybe that's due partly to the pandemic too, because a lot of trail and ultra races were able to go as opposed to some of the road races. Yeah. But it was a little bit before that like larger boom in trail and ultra racing or ultra running. But yeah, my husband was like, hey, you know what, let's, there's like trail running and there's these different races we could do. It's totally different from like road marathons. Like, let's do it. So we ran a few 50Ks before my husband was like, hey, let's take on a 50 miler. And at the time I thought, oh my gosh, this is like my max. Like I'm already like feeling it with these 50Ks. So we trained for the North Face, Wisconsin 50 miler. I can't recall what year that was, but at the time I thought, okay, this is the longest I'll ever go, especially on trail. And then, I think maybe it was like 2 months later, my husband Mitchell was like, well, we should probably, there's this 100-miler out in the Grand Canyon. We should do it. And I thought, oh my gosh, this was never like a goal of mine. I don't know anything about going this far or long, through like mountainous terrain and things like that. But yeah, so we ended up signing up for it. I then quickly realized that the reason why he'd kind of planned all this out is because he ended up proposing at the finish line of that 100-miler, our first one together. So that was kind of the big push for me to for both of us to complete the race. I was chatting with another friend about this, but my parents were out for that race as well. And I remember I was just like, we were at halfway and I was like, I was sitting down and I was telling my dad, I was like, Dad, I was like, I really don't want to finish this. I just don't feel like it. It's dark. I want to lay down and go to bed. That was the first time that I'd had to run through the night, with no sleep or anything. And I just remember my dad being like, I know it does kind of stink right now, but you should finish this race. Because my parents did know that my husband was proposing at the finish. So. Oh,
that's so good.
Yeah.
The 100-miler will always be marked as like the start of your marriage or whatever.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So it is really special. So.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So now that you have this national championship, explain to us, was that a golden ticket race? Can you get into Western States now?
Right. It's actually not. It's not. The national championship was not a golden ticket race. However, it definitely is a goal of mine to run Western States. Whether that's through the lottery. I have a few tickets now, just from over the years. I haven't gotten in yet via the lottery. For anyone that's familiar with it, it is super, super hard to get in. Just because of permitting, they only allow 369 runners. And there's a bunch of different rules, but yeah, that's definitely something that's been on my radar. I've chatted with a few friends that have run Western multiple times. And I would love to go after a golden ticket race in the future. So
now that you have won this race and, you finished ahead of someone named Camille Herron, do you before when you were I want to do Western States, do you have a more competitive mindset about what you would want to do at Western States now?
Yeah, I think so. I think, and you kind of brought it up too, but I think it's taken me a long time. And like I said, I feel like it's an ongoing process for me to accept the fact that I am in this elite space in ultra running. So yes, you're absolutely right. I do feel like I'm kind of starting to see this shift in mindset that I'm not just kind of randomly lining up anymore. I have the ability, to train and go for more competitive, placements within these races and things like that. So, I have a few personal goals. I've nailed down, particularly looking towards 2022, that I had written down as goals in, I want to say like late 2019. But at the time, I really thought like these were like pie in the sky. I thought, I'll dream big. Who knows, if I'll be able to get there. But yeah, it's been exciting to see kind of my fitness and my training just from consecutive years of like aerobic base building kind of come together. And like I said, I thought these initial goals that I had set were maybe years and years from now. But it's exciting to see that it's actually much sooner than I anticipated. So.
Yeah. And I don't want to sound corny, but it's one of those things where like you kind of feel like when you put yourself out there, at least for me.
Yeah.
You sometimes like doubt yourself. Like, do people wonder like, well, who does she think she is? You know what I mean? And until you like fully believe it yourself, it's probably not going to happen.
Right.
Whatever it is. Right.
Yeah. That's definitely, I feel like what happened with this national championship race, it's like, I had a few friends, like I said, like my friend Micah, I had my friend Jake there. They've both been on Team USA. But other than that, and even like at the award ceremony, the race director was even talking about it. I don't want to say I definitely went into this race as like the sleeper. Just because like there's a lot of like talk and advertisement about the national championships just because it was like one of the races of the year, at least for the 100-mile distance with the field. And I don't really think anyone, I definitely wasn't mentioned in it. And I don't have a chip on my shoulder about this, but it's just a fact. It's like I wasn't mentioned at all in any of the pre-race briefing, and rightfully so. I hadn't, I'd raced Tunnel Hill, but this was, kind of my first larger, elite race. So, like I said, it's, I think I really did need to kind of lean into my training, trust it, and then kind of own the fact that while everyone else may have said like, yeah, there's definitely potential there. I definitely had to actually believe in it myself in order to have the day that I did. So.
Yes, they won't forget your name next time to mention it. Your Instagram profile says you are limitless. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I've always really, really liked that. It's not really like a quote by any means, but, I also coach runners too, in addition to my patients. And I've always noticed how much like my belief in someone else can be my encouragement of someone else. Like, even if they, like we just mentioned, like we always need to have that self-belief before we can kind of take things to the next level. But, I always tell my patients and my athletes, like, don't ever put limits on yourself because you don't know what can happen. You don't know what others are doing. And we can really achieve anything that we put our minds to. And like just using myself as an example, like I'll tell anyone that asks, I never in a million years thought that I would find myself in this position, but it is like 10 years of just consistent training, and just kind of being focused more on the process than anything, and just not being too greedy along the way, just being patient about it. And maybe none of this would have happened if I, put a limit on myself, like, oh, you know what, I've peaked at like a 3:20 marathon. Maybe I'll just put distance running to rest. No one should have limits, and we can achieve so much if we just continue to stay at it and stay patient.
Hey friends, a quick break here to thank Athletic Brewing Company for supporting this episode of the podcast. Athletic Brewing Company brews the most delicious craft beer, and it's non-alcoholic. The founders, Bill and John, started Athletic because there was nothing like it on the market. They're craft beer lovers who want to cut back on alcohol without compromising flavor. They realized that the innovation and interesting flavors that they loved in other craft beers just weren't available in non-alcoholic beer. So they brewed the beer that they wanted to drink. It turns out there were lots of other drinkers looking to moderate or abstain from their alcohol consumption, but they also enjoy the taste of good beer. Now, they have recently expanded their brewery and tap room on the East Coast and just opened a new brewery on the West Coast. Now, this beer is an award-winning craft beer, and it only has 50 to 70 calories per can, and it fits in for any beer occasion. So you don't have to compromise your social life or choose between having great beer and keeping your edge. I love what Athletic Brewing Company is doing. I personally have been cutting back on my alcohol quite a bit, but I do love to have a yummy drink in hand, especially when I'm hanging out with friends on a Friday after work. All right, so you all can go to athleticbrewing.com, use the discount code ANOTHERATHLETIC15, and you will save 15% off if you're a new customer on your first purchase. Again, go to athleticbrewing.com, use the code ANOTHERATHLETIC15, and you'll get 15% off if you're a new customer. And also don't forget, if you buy more than 2 6-packs, you'll get free shipping as well. All right, enjoy the rest of my conversation with Stefanie. How do you stay motivated?
Yeah, that's a good question. Something that I feel like I get asked a lot. I'm not like this superhuman that has like unlimited motivation. That's definitely a myth. I don't think anyone is like that. I think what's been helpful for me is that I have created like a daily habit out of running. I think Des Linden actually initially spoke about this, about how like to her, like going for a run is just like brushing her teeth. She's made it a part of her daily practice. And that's something that really resonated with me. I can't remember when she shared that, but for me, it's like that, making it just a part of my everyday life has made it easier when I'm like, you know what, I'm so tired. Like I'm home from work, like after clinic. I don't feel like doing this right now. And yeah, it's just something that it's just become a part of my life. So that kind of helps stand in for when I'm lacking the motivation. Along those same lines, though, too, I feel like, you're always going to have more motivation if you're actually excited about the goal that you've set. I see that a lot with like some of my athletes where it's like, and we've heard this too, where I feel like a lot of folks feel like, they have to run a marathon, like each fall or like each spring and each fall. And that's like not for everyone. Not everyone, enjoys the road marathon distance. And just because everyone else is doing it doesn't mean you have to too. So yeah, I mean, for me, I probably would have benefited from focusing on other distances and things like that. But, I really did want to return to the 100-miler. And I'm really glad that I did. So that was something that excited me.
I love that you bring up like, just because everybody else is racing the road marathon doesn't mean that you have to race the road marathon. Like, right. Yes, it is so exciting to see people grabbing these like marathon PRs and going sub 4, sub 3, whatever their goal is. And it's easy to get caught up in like, oh, I need to do that too. But if that's not bringing you joy, you actually don't need to do that.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's kind of this space that I, kind of had to address and I found myself in. After I ran a big PR at Indy, but, it was short of like what my fitness said that I should have ran on the day. But, I had an opportunity to race. I was signed up for Houston, but it was just becoming very evident to me that my heart just wasn't in it. I had just ran a big PR, and my heart just wasn't in turning around and trying to like hack off another, 9 minutes on it. I mean, physically, like, yeah, I'm sure I could have, but, just because you physically can doesn't mean that you should, and I found myself lacking motivation, and that's because my heart wasn't in it. So anytime I have athletes that are, they're like, I'm just not motivated, I don't feel like going out for this run. It's like, well, let's sit down. We can always pivot. Just because you set a goal for one thing, and, and then halfway through you decide that your heart's not really in it, there's no reason why you can't pivot. I think that's really important, to be flexible with yourself and gentle with yourself. Because sometimes we think something sounds fun and exciting, and then we get into the meat of it and it's like, well, maybe I don't feel like doing this. And that's okay too, because, like I said, I'm not a professional runner. My athletes aren't professionals, and, it's not something that we ever have to do. So.
Yes, we need to remind ourselves of that.
Yeah.
My son reminds me of that. If I'm like, I don't want to go run, he'll be like, well, you don't have to go run. And I'm like, you are right.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to go do it, I should probably not say I don't want to go do it. I need to reframe my thinking here. Yeah. If I'm going to do it anyway.
Right.
Okay. Well, I know you coach with Mary, Lift, Run, Perform. So you just do all the things.
Yeah, I know. I really enjoy it. I'm so glad that Mary and I connected, and this is something that I've started to do because it's something that's brought me a lot of joy to coach other runners.
So I imagine though you have to cap your size of athletes you coach pretty small, considering all your other responsibilities.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that is something I definitely am not in a position to go like full time with coaching by any means. Yeah, I do have to be careful. Cause like even, and I think I might have mentioned this, in the past, but, even like with my own training, I'm always really cognizant. Like obviously I have goals and I had goals for this past race, but I didn't want them to detract at all from my athletes. That's something that's important to me. So yeah.
That is a really good point. Yeah. Okay. Well, this has just been wonderful. I was so excited to talk to you.
Me too.
Congratulations. Seriously.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lindsay. I appreciate it.
So exciting. What's something professionally or personally that you'd like to do that you haven't done yet?
Yeah. You know what? I've actually always wanted to write a book. So even though I am, science-based, I did like my undergraduate was like in human biology. I actually minored in English literature and journalism. That's always been like a big passion of mine, is writing. I love to write. So yeah, I've been kind of mulling that over. That's like a long-term goal. I don't know when that'll actually get up and off the ground, but yeah, I would definitely love to write a book someday.
Like a memoir type book?
Yeah, something in that realm. And then maybe not like a self-motivation like style, but something along those lines, just kind of based on my own personal experiences. So
I love it.
Yeah.
What is the best, most recent book you've read?
Ooh, yes. Full disclosure, I feel like I haven't been reading as much as I should or normally would be.
a million miles a week and running a practice.
I know. Well, I would definitely have to say the best book that I've most recently read is Bravey by Alexi Pappas. I know that's been a very popular book in the running space, but definitely a favorite of mine. I think largely because, her book is different than some of the other books that like professional runners have released, and because she is a writer first and foremost,
sure.
and a poet. So I feel like that just added a really neat element to the book. I'd highly recommend it to anyone. So
is there poetry in the book or just in the way that she writes?
I think like each kind of chapter that she starts off with, it does like, I would probably call it a poem.
Okay.
But yeah, it is more so in the way she writes too. But yeah, I think it's a really, really neat book and just so emotional as well. It really like tugs at the heart.
Who is someone fun, motivating, or inspiring you'd like to have coffee, tea, or cocktail with?
Yeah, I think I was thinking about this. I'd probably have to go with either Julia Louis-Dreyfus or Catherine O'Hara. I'm such a big sucker for comedy, and those two are hilarious. Yeah, I would love to have a cocktail with either of them. They're so funny. So
that's a great answer.
Yeah, I love how like just like how active Julia Louis-Dreyfus is like in like everything. I mean, she's very like outspoken about things, and she's obviously so funny. So she'd be a great person to meet up with.
If you could dance really well, sing really well, or be really funny, and maybe you are one of those, I don't know.
Sure.
What would you choose?
I would choose to be really funny. Yeah, I mean, I actually grew up doing competitive ballet. I definitely would not say that I'm like a very good dancer anymore. I feel like running has kind of taken away all sort of like flexibility or like grace that I may have had. But I'm definitely not a good singer. So yeah, I would go with being really funny. I like stand-up comedy and The Office and all those types of shows. So
me too. I mean, yeah. I like would just love to be one of those people that could do stand-up comedy. Like I think that would be such a dream. I can't imagine how challenging it is.
I know. Yeah.
Oh, that's my favorite thing is to find a good stand-up comedy special. So
yes.
People need to bring some more out on Netflix because I feel like I've burned through them all.
Yeah, yeah.
The Tennessee Kid, have you seen him?
Yes, I have. Oh my gosh. I was just thinking about him. I couldn't remember like his name though, but we recently watched that.
I always accidentally call him the Comeback Kid.
Yeah.
But I love his style. It's
Yeah, me too.
so chill.
Yeah, it is really chill.
So there's something to watch, everybody, if you're looking for a good laugh. He's on, I think he has a new special on Netflix. So he has an older one too on there. So there's a couple.
Yeah, they're both really funny.
Okay, what is your last message you'd like to leave with our audience today?
Let me see. I would probably say, like, keep things fun. Don't take yourself too seriously. You know, you can be serious about your goals, and you can, you know, take your training really seriously, or not just training. Like, if you're listening and you're like, hey, I'm not a runner, you know, I'm in, you know, something different. Like, you can take all of your goals really seriously, without just totally zapping the fun out of things. You know, the process and the journey doesn't always have to be so rigid, you know, and strict, like a strict regimen in order for things to go successfully. I feel like that's been, you know, kind of a part of my recent success with running, is that I've just been really, really flexible and not so hard on myself. You know, I think a lot of times we're like, oh, if I don't hit these paces, it means I can't run, you know, I'm not gonna be able to run this or hold this time in a race. That's just simply not true. You know, we all have bad days, you know, and I would say that more often than not, you know, in my training leading up to the national championships, there was workouts that I cut short. There were things where I was like, you know what, I can't get to this 30-mile long run today. I'm going to have to cut it at 27. And that's just an example, but, you know, I'm just going to have to cut it a little bit short. I'm tired, and that's okay. It's always okay. You know, and along the way, if you have failures or you have successes, I always just like to stay in the middle, stay humble about it. You know, continue to put in the work. And you can't fail when you have that type of mindset.
I love it. Thank you so much, Stefanie.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody. Thanks for being here today. Thank you, Stefanie, for sharing your story. Don't forget to head over and follow Stefanie on Instagram. You guys won't regret that. You can find me on Instagram. I'm Lindsay Hine 626. I also host the parenting podcast, Why Is Everyone Yelling? Check that out. My most recent episode is with my husband, Glenn, where we say we give expert advice from non-expert parents, meaning us. Actually, most episodes I am interviewing experts, but this past week it was us non-experts on the episode. You can learn more about all of our sponsors and everything we talked about in the show when you go to lindsayhine.com. That's where the show notes are. If you are on our email list, you'll get those emailed to you directly. If you're not on the email list, you can always be added. Email Emma at sandyboyproductions.com. That's my assistant, and she will get you added to our email list if you want added. You can also just fill out the form on my website, lindsayhine.com. I think that's all I got for you, friends. Thank you so much for joining us today, and have a great Friday, a wonderful rest of your weekend. And as always, we'll see you next Friday.